Hey everybody, Garry Adelman, American Battlefield Trust, and I'm really happy to be here in Sharpsburg, Maryland, not just on the Antietam or Sharpsburg battlefield, but actually in Sharpsburg. I don't think very many people come into Sharpsburg to learn about the people who lived here, the people who were impacted by it, and to see the extant structures that were here in 1862. Maybe they come through on their car on their way to the battlefield to or fro, or maybe they stop at a especially special ice cream place that we might visit while we're here. But I do think that this is worth a look, and we're going to bring on again our friend and expert and dunker, Dennis Frye, who you've already met before, co-founder of the American Battlefield Trust predecessor organization. And let's just pop around town a little bit. Let's start now, Dennis.
Hi everybody, welcome to one of my hometowns, Sharpsburg, Maryland, and I say home purposely. If you're familiar with the Antietam battlefield, you'll recognize this name, Poffenberger. Great local name here in the Antietam Valley. Well, my mother's maiden name is Poffenberger. Yeah, when people ask me if I had ancestors in the Civil War, I'll say, kinda. And then I get this weird look like, how can you kind of have an ancestor? And I explain, my ancestors hosted the Civil War. So here we are in Sharpsburg, a hometown. Now the first thing you're going to notice about Sharpsburg is noise, lots of noise. We're at a very busy intersection here of 4 roads that come together. Even historically, this particular intersection would have been fairly noisy because of all these roads coming from every direction of the compass, and they do. As example, the road that's immediately behind me is coming in from the north, from Hagerstown. Hagerstown is the county seat of Washington County. This is the Hagerstown-Sharpsburg Turnpike. Here, this direction, we're heading west and we're heading towards Shepherdstown across the Potomac River. Shepherdstown is very close to us. It's only about 3 miles from here, the boundary between Virginia and Maryland, or West Virginia today, 3 miles. The road here going east towards South Mountain and Boonesboro. This is the Boonesboro-Sharpsburg Turnpike, very important. This is the road that Lee's army would withdraw from South Mountain towards Sharpsburg. So they're coming at us in this direction. And then this road right here, this goes to a place that you're familiar with. It's called Burnside Bridge. In fact, if you follow this road, historically would have taken you across the Burnside Bridge. You can't do that anymore because now there's a bypass when you go over the Antietam above the Burnside Bridge. But this would be the historic route that would take you to what became the famous Burnside Bridge. There actually are 6 roads that come together here in Sharpsburg. It's kind of like Gettysburg. You know, Gettysburg became important because of all the roads that came together there. Sharpsburg has 6 roads. There's 2 more that come in at the town square. Now, the other thing about this intersection is kind of interesting. Historically, at the time of the battle, there would have been 4 houses here. All of them look pretty much like the one you see across the street. That house was here in 1862. It witnessed the action. It witnesses the withdrawal of Robert E. Lee's army. In fact, that house, in its rafters, you can still see where shells busted rafters to pieces, and they had to marry new pieces onto the rafters inside that building so that the ceiling and the roof wouldn't collapse. You can still see evidence of that today. And then over here on this corner, this church that you see, that wasn't here. That's a more modern church. I'll put modern in quotation marks because that's a replacement church. That's a replacement church for the Lutheran Church. And you're going to recognize that. Gary and I are going to go to Lutheran Church in just a moment because that's one of Alexander Gardner's famous photographs of Sharpsburg. And then over here you can see through the trees a very sizable, almost mansion-like house here in Sharpsburg made out of stone. It's one of the oldest buildings in town, 18th century, beautiful, beautiful stonework. And let's go take a walk. One of the most important things about Sharpsburg is this, that it's down in a basin, it's down in a hole. That saves the town. Unlike Gettysburg, where there was so much fighting in the town itself, because this thing sits down in a hollow, it really saves Sharpsburg from the fighting between McClellan and Lincoln's army here. McClellan and Lee's army, pardon me. And so Lincoln liked to think of it as army, didn't he? But this house right here is really important. We'll pause just a moment. Let the truck pass. Here we are now looking on the downside or the western side of this hill. All the fighting occurs away from us on the other side of the slope. Thank goodness. that saves Sharpsburg. But this particular house does receive damage because you see Union artillery fire is actually coming up and over this brow of the hill, and this particular house takes some shell fire. In addition, we still have in this house, which was the Piper house. You may recognize the name Piper. They have a farm on the battlefield. This is the house that they own in town. This house has bullet holes that still remain in doors and window frames that are very, very visible today. And so although there was no fighting in the streets of Sharpsburg, it was dangerous to be here. You didn't want to be a civilian just kind of lounging around saying, hey, what's going on? That could end up with you having a bullet or a shell, just like this particular house. Probably the most famous photograph of Sharpsburg taken right after the battle, an Alexander Gardner photograph showing a damaged structure in Sharpsburg on high ground. Well, that's the Lutheran Church. And the Lutheran Church is right here behind us, literally right here behind us. Now you can see the cemetery. This is the reason this was referred to as Cemetery Hill. And where you see this ground right here, this high ground where you see this fence, that's where the church stood. Now I put that in past tense. The church was so badly damaged that they really weren't able to recover it. So eventually they would build a new church a little bit further down in town at the intersection of the Boonesboro-Sharpsburg Pike and the Hagerstown-Sharpsburg Turnpike. But this is where the church stood. It was elevated. The Confederates did use it as an observation point, as almost a signal station, and Federal artillery coming in would be able to use it as a target because you'd be able to see the top of the church even over top of the rise. And so the church is badly damaged. Now the church stood here. Here's a platform that actually represents the foundation of the church. But look at these gravestones in here. You might say, well, why are the gravestones inside the church? Let's walk on inside the church for a moment. So right now, I'm coming inside the walls of the church. I'm within the Lutheran Church. This would have been a dangerous place to be on Battle Day, September the 17th. Federal shells raining down upon us from this direction. And so after the battle, they really can't save this place. They decide to build a new location, and this becomes a private family graveyard for the wealthiest family in this area, the Shawman family. Look at this. Here's Daddy Shawman, David, S-H-O-W-M-A-N. They own nearly 1,700 acres here in this area. No other property owner came close to that. They were big slave owners also. He dies before the war, but let me show you his son. This is Raleigh Sharman. Now, although it's S-H-O-W-M-A-N, sounds like showman, they actually pronounced it Sharman. This chap is a victim of the war. He's not a soldier. He's a civilian. He's less than 50 years old. He will die from what's known as camp disease. Yeah, the Army will kill this man because the Army brings with it diseases. Measles, smallpox, all kinds of horrible things. These people at Sharpsburg had never experienced anything like that. You need to remember that Sharpsburg went from about 1,100 people to over 130,000 people with the two armies here. It was literally an invasion of Sharpsburg, and they left a lot of their disease behind, not just debris, but disease. Raleigh Sharman is a victim of that disease, dying in April of 1863, that much later, from camp disease. I have a special interest in this gentleman. He built my house about 1840, and he married Elizabeth Piper. Oh yeah, the Piper family from the battlefield marries Elizabeth Piper. Not only does he die, but there's another tragedy. Elizabeth gives birth to their son 1 month after his death. The Civil War kept killing long after September 17th. Most of the houses in Sharpsburg are either stone or brick or frame, but this particular house is one of the oldest, an 18th century house, and it really stands out because this was one of the places in town where the civilians spent the day of the battle in the basement. The house was so strong, it was almost a stone fortress. They felt safe to be in the basement. Even though shells are flying around, and unfortunately no fighting on the streets, quite a number of civilians in Sharpsburg spent the day of September 17th in the basement of this house. Sharpsburg, back during the centennial, marks the historic houses, and you'll find a black plaque that really indicates those homes that were here. You'll see them when you drive through. They're pretty small and you usually miss them, but if you have to do like we're doing right now, Gary and I walking through town, you'll see these really lovely ornate black plaques that indicate that the building was there on battle day. Welcome to Sharpsburg's Town Square. Now, the house right behind me, the brick house behind me, is known as the Grove House, and it's really important because it was there on the night of September the 17th that General Lee holds a council of war with his commanding generals Longstreet, Jackson, division commanders, and he goes from general to general and he says, how is it on your end of the field? How is it on your end of the field? He wants to try to get an assessment. When he came to John Bell Hood, and Hood responds to General Lee, my men are dead on the field, sir, dead on the field. Here on the square, two more roads coming together. One leads to Snyder's Landing, a place on the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal to our northwest. And this one leads to Harper's Ferry. That road right there is called the Harper's Ferry Road. And if you were to follow it today, it winds and twists and up and down. It really hasn't changed much except that they've paved it. But it's a great country road here in this section of Washington County, and it's the shortest distance between Sharpsburg and Harper's Ferry. One other thing that I so love about Sharpsburg is this: these people love their town. They love their town. They keep it clean. It is immaculate. They take pride in the history. They maintain their buildings. And you know something else? Sharpsburg's preserved in this regard. It can't grow, and it won't grow. Sharpsburg is surrounded by ground that is preserved today. And so we don't have preservation threats to encroach. We're not going to have hotels. We're not going to have gas stations. We're not going to have fast food burger joints here in Sharpsburg because our environs are completely protected. Well, what a difference. We are one block from the main street of Sharpsburg, and it's quiet. I can hear me. You can hear me better. I really like this. We're on an alley, and there are many of these public alleys in downtown Sharpsburg, and I love to walk them. In fact, if you come out on the battlefield and you have a little extra time, come on into Sharpsburg and just walk the public alleys, because you're going to see great architecture, great 18th and 19th century architecture, as you can see here in the back of the buildings. Those buildings are on Main Street. Listen how quiet it is. What a difference, just one block. But the other reason I wanted to bring you back this alley, you better believe Civil War soldiers found this alley, because there's something here that is better than gold. There's something here that nourishes you and brings you life. Water. The main reason Sharpsburg was established was because of this spring right here. It's called the Big Spring, and it is a big spring. And the water that comes out of here is so important. Not only did it provide the principal water source for the citizens of Sharpsburg, but for the Confederates, we're behind Confederate lines during battle day. And so anybody that might have been wounded or hurt or just trying to take a break, recuperate, they know this water source is here. One thing about a Civil War soldier, they could always find water. They always knew where the water was. So this was the principal water source. Now, many of the local farms had their own springs. All the local farms had their own spring. But the trouble was, the farms is where the fighting was occurring. That's the battlefield. You're not going to get water there. But here, no fighting, fairly quiet compared to what's happening all around us. We'd hear the battle roaring, but we're safe here. We're actually safe here. So this is one of the most important places for especially Confederate soldiers, those of the South that are here, to come. Now, this water, you know, if we didn't have all these regulations today, I could drink that water. I wouldn't get sick. I mean, this is pure, beautiful spring water coming right up out of the earth. right up out of the limestone caverns that we have here that form the basis of the Antietam Valley. It is absolutely spectacular. Look at how clear that is. And you know, it's so cool. It's probably, oh my, I'll bet you that's somewhere in its 50s, Gary. And just look at that. Look at how beautiful that water is.
And I'll say it's not only crisp and clear, but as soldiers sometimes said, the pellucid waters, the pellucid spring waters, meaning cool and crisp, I think, and clear.
One of the most important places in Sharpsburg for the Confederate Army, right here. This brought them life amidst all of this death. Sharpsburg is full of landmarks, historic landmarks, but one of the most famous places in Sharpsburg has nothing to do with history. It has everything to do with the taste of your tongue and your tummy. Nutter's ice cream. This is one of the best ice cream places on the planet. And man, after you spend a whole day out on the battlefield, make sure you come here and spend some time at Nutter's. Locally owned, locally staffed, a lot of high school kids often working in here. I love to come to Nutter's. It's not unusual for me after I've spent all day leading a tour, especially a bus tour. This is my first stop. In fact, all afternoon, although I might be talking about the Civil War, I'm thinking about Nutter's.
And let me just say, I think they've also got some old-time prices as well, and we are not being compensated by them. We're paying them back for doing right by the Sharpsburg community, and Mary Abro of our board at the Trust might be its biggest fan.
Be sure to stop at Nutter's.
Wow, we're very fortunate that we happen to be filming right as the town is opening up and beautifying their municipal parking lot here in Sharpsburg. So you see it here, and you could see that the town sort of wanted a mural that would get into the C&O Canal and some of the farm experience, the Burnside Bridge, the big spring, which we just did. And look, Dennis and the artist, John Bonner, are right here working on it. So Dennis, I think you might have a question or two.
Well, I'll tell you something, Gary. I'm not working on it because I can't even draw a straight line, but John certainly can. I mean, look at how beautiful this is. This is really extraordinary. He's used around a turn-of-the-century photograph for this, and it is just a beautiful rendition of the town. So right around 1890, 1900 or so. And John, tell me, why are you using the color that you're using?
Well, the mural starts off with a sepia brown color. Back in the day, back in the period where the C&O Canal was in full swing, we started with that color, and then it transitions into full color, where the central theme of the mural itself is to welcome visitors to Sharpsburg, and then it'll transition back to sepia with a period depiction of the town skyline.
I am so happy to see this. Now, what I didn't tell you is this man right here, not only is he talented, he was so talented, he worked for National Geographic. He was a professional artist employed by National Geographic.
This man right
here.
here.
That's right. Recently retired. And so Sharpsburg's really lucky to have him. And Washington County, he moved here into Washington County. We're very fortunate to have him as a neighbor. And I'm thank you so much. This is beautiful work. We really appreciate it.
I certainly appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
guys.
Yeah, thank you, John. It's nice to meet you. And Dennis, take us out.
Well, I tell you, this was a really, really quick view of Sharpsburg. And you didn't see a whole lot, but what you saw is important. Consider this an invitation. We want you to come back. When you come to the Antietam battlefield, spend some time in Sharpsburg. Get to know this town. This town will make you feel the Civil War. You'll feel it. You'll carry that feeling you have on the battlefield right into downtown Sharpsburg. So come explore Sharpsburg. It is worth your time.